Last Thursday, in the Dubai desert, 2 men bled into the sand. One was stabbed by the crew he came to make peace with. Another was crushed under a motor by his own allies. A peace summit. 90 seconds, 2 bodies. But here's the question nobody's asking. Why would the Daniels risk everything for a big mouth kid? Why blow up their sanctuary in Dubai? Why ambush a sit-down that was supposed to save them? The answer? It wasn't about the kid at all. Our insider sources tell us it started with a big mouth lad. You see this all the time. A junior associate who thinks he can borrow his boss's reputation to make himself somebody. This kid was running around Dubai claiming he was Larwood's kin, using that name to threaten the Daniel crew. Writing checks with his mouth his boss never signed. But here's where the ground shifts. For months, Steven Larwood had been selling a story. I'm my own man. I'm neutral. I'm not involved. And in late September, he made it visible. While his allies, Steven Lyons, Ross McGill, were operating in deep cover, dodging Interpol red notices, Larwood was out in the open, posing for holiday photos with his family like a retired expat. No tails, no watchers, no fear. That was his fatal error, because when that junior started taunting the Daniel clan, claiming Larwood's protection, Larwood did nothing. No punishment, no retraction. He let the insult stand, believing his neutrality would save him. That silence was the green light. The Daniels didn't see a boss controlling his territory. They saw a civilian who couldn't police his own house. A man who'd send negotiators, not soldiers. And that, my friends, is why they packed knives while Larwood's men packed excuses. The call came quick. Bring the kid. We'll sort this out. It sounded reasonable. A sit down. A slap. A solution. Larwood's crew believed in the protocol. They drove into the desert expecting a conversation. But the Daniels had already made their decision. They didn't send negotiators. They sent a heavy crew with weapons. They let Larwood's men walk into the middle of nowhere thinking they'd talk, while the trap was already set. The big mouth lad thought he'd get a lecture. Instead, he led his friends into a slaughterhouse. You assume the other side values peace like you do, but when a crew smells weakness and is fighting for survival, there is no peace, only ambush. And when those car doors opened in the desert, the talking was already over. This isn't the Dubai you see on the travel brochures. This isn't the gold souks or the air-conditioned malls or the infinity pools overlooking the marina. This is the desert. It is hot, it is dusty, and it is empty. When you drive out there, the city disappears. The cell service gets spotty. The luxury fades away, and you are left with nothing but sand and the people you came with. It is the perfect place to bury a secret, or a body. So, the cars pull up, the engines cut, the silence of the desert rushes in. On one side, you have Larwood's crew. They step out, expecting a conversation. They are ready to offer up the big mouth lad. Maybe let him take a beating to settle the score, are playing by the old rules. But then the other doors open, and right away, you know the math is wrong. The Daniel faction didn't just send a representative, they sent a heavy crew. They outnumbered Larwood's people immediately, and they didn't come with empty hands. In that split second, when you see the glint of a blade or the heavy shift of a man reaching for something in his waistband, the talking stops, the adrenaline hits you like a train. You realize you have walked into a kill box. It kicked off instantly. There were no handshakes, no how are you doing. The Daniels launched their attack. They swarmed the big mouth lad and his protectors. It was savage. This wasn't a warning, it was an attempt to erase the competition. One man from the Lyons side, Larwood's associate, took the worst of it. He was knifed, stabbed in the mayhem. You can imagine the panic. You are miles from a hospital. Blood is pouring into the sand, and the people who are supposed to be your business partners are trying to end you. But here is where it gets messy. Here is where the strategic genius of the ambush falls apart. When the knives come out, panic sets in. People scatter, engines roar back to life. In the confusion, a car screams through the melee. It's chaos. Dust is flying, men are shouting, bodies are moving, and thud, a man goes down under the wheels. But it wasn't one of the targets. Reports tell us that in the madness, one of the Daniel crew, the very men who set the trap, got run over. That is the reality of violence, my friends. It is not a movie, it is not choreographed. It is messy, it is ugly, and it bites back. You set a trap, and sometimes you catch your own foot in the teeth. Now, look at the men who were there. This tells you everything you need to know about the stakes. This wasn't a squabble between foot soldiers. The Daniels sent their varsity team. We are told that Ross Sherlock was part of the Daniel delegation. This is a man who knows about survival. He lived through an assassination attempt in Bishopbriggs back in 2015. He has seen the barrel of a gun more times than most men have seen a dentist. He is a survivor, and he is dangerous. Then you have Fergus Smith Fergie. The Lyons gang calls him Enemy Number 1. That is a title you earn. He is 44 years old, from Mount Vernon. He had just been released from a 13-month stretch in August. Why was he in jail? For hiding 16 grand in a Paddy Power account, breaching a super ASBO. He bolted to Dubai the moment he got out, fearing for his safety. But clearly, he didn't go there to retire. He went there to work. On the other side, representing the Lyons and Larwood, you had Robert Bob Maguire, a Drumchapel thug with a heavy heart and a heavy hand, infamous for ordering revenge attacks after his brother, Billy Maguire, was murdered. And David Mincy Mackenzie, a man who did 7 years for a £1 million cocaine operation linked to Jamie Iceman Stevenson. They are the generals of this war. And there they were, scrapping in the sand like desperate men. The injured were hauled into cars. The Daniel crew, with their stabbed victim and their run-over man, had to flee. The Lyons crew had to scramble. The silence of the desert returned, but the blood was already spilled. The police were coming. The peace summit was over before it began, and all it did was pour gasoline on a fire that was already burning out of control. The man under the wheels, one of their own. In the chaos, in the dust, in the panic, they didn't just stab Larwood's crew, they crushed one of their own brothers. The trap had teeth, and it bit the hand that set it. The fallout, no safe haven. You can't hide a stab wound in Dubai. In Glasgow, maybe you can stitch it up in a kitchen, keep your mouth shut, and hope the neighbours didn't hear the screaming. But in the Emirates, it doesn't work like that. When you drag a bleeding man into a hospital, or when a car comes back with a dent the shape of a human body, the system activates. And I'm telling you, the system in Dubai is not like the system in Scotland. In the UK, the police need warrants. They need evidence. They need to follow procedure. And sometimes that takes months. The criminals know this. They play the game, they dance around the law, and they buy time. But in the Gulf, the police don't dance. They move. The moment the violence spilled into the open, the Dubai police didn't wait for a judge to sign a piece of paper. They moved with a speed that these men were not used to. Within hours, the sirens were wailing. The authorities raided several properties across the city. They didn't knock politely. They kicked the doors in. It is understood that 4 men were lifted immediately. The handcuffs went on, and the reality of their situation set in. Among those feeling the heat were the heavy hitters, the people who thought their money and their distance from Scotland gave them immunity. By bringing the war to the desert, they shattered the illusion that Dubai was untouchable. For years, it had been the golden cage for British organised crime. You spend your money, you live in the sun, and as long as the violence stays in Glasgow, the authorities look the other way. But the ambush broke that contract. Steven Lyons, the man at the top of the opposing faction, found himself in a position he had worked very hard to avoid. He had been living the high life, rubbing shoulders with the global elite of the Underworld, including ties to the Kinahan cartel. He thought he was untouchable, but when the police raided those properties, that bubble burst. You cannot be a ghost when you are sitting in a Dubai jail cell. The same goes for Steven Larwood. For months, Steven Larwood had been selling a story. I'm my own man. I'm neutral. I'm not involved. He was telling anyone who would listen that he was his own man, that he wasn't part of the war anymore. He was just a businessman. But because his big mouth associate dragged him into a meet, and because the Daniels decided to ambush that meet, Larwood was pulled right back into the center of the frame. His rebranding didn't matter. The police didn't care about his story. They cared about the blood in the sand. We are told that after the arrests, the pressure was applied. The authorities in the UAE do not necessarily want to spend years prosecuting foreign gangsters. They just want them gone. It's cleaner that way. Reports suggest that Lyons, Larwood, and the agitator Ross Miami McGill were effectively shown the door. They were booted out, or at the very least, made to understand that their welcome had expired. Think about what that means. These men had built their entire survival strategy around being out of reach of Police Scotland. They had moved their families, their money, and their operations to the Gulf. Now, because of one chaotic meeting in the desert, that sanctuary is gone. They are exposed. The Daniel clan, specifically Francis Green, might have taken a risk by sending his men into a trap that went wrong, but look at the result. They forced their enemies out of the castle. They made the untouchables vulnerable again. It was a messy, bloody affair, and their own men got hurt, no doubt about it. But in the long game of attrition, they managed to burn down the safe house that the Lyons faction had been living in for years. The arrests in Dubai sent a shockwave through the underworld. It wasn't just about the 4 men who got lifted. It was a message to every other face in the crowd over there. The rules had changed. The desert wasn't quiet anymore. If you can get stabbed in Dubai, you can get lifted in Dubai. And if you get lifted in Dubai, you might just find yourself on a plane back to a rainy tarmac in Glasgow, where the detectives have very long memories and a very long list of questions. The Peace Summit didn't bring peace. It brought the end of the golden age for the Scots in Dubai. The ambush proved that there is nowhere left to run. The feud has no borders, and now, it has no rules. The men who walked away from that desert trap didn't just leave with injuries. They left with the knowledge that the walls were closing in, and the world had just gotten a whole lot smaller. Glasgow, October 2025. The streets are talking, not about the ambush, not about the arrests, about the math. The Lyons faction had the money, the connections, the momentum. But the killings in Spain and the disaster in Dubai have cracked the foundation. Our sources tell us the Daniel clan, the D-mob, is back in control of their old territory in the north of the city. They're moving into the void left by the men who are now dead or on the run. It's a new era for the leadership too. Steven Bonzo, Daniel, the man who survived the machete attack that shocked the world, is apparently happy to take a back seat. He's seen enough. The network is now said to be headed by Francis Fraggle Green, a man now wearing a bulletproof vest everywhere he goes. He knows that a cornered enemy is a dangerous enemy. The war that has raged across the Central Belt since March isn't cooling down. It's just changing shape. The soft touch label that the Daniels applied to Steven Larwood, that wasn't just an insult, it was a strategy. They identified the weak link, the man trying to play businessman, and they used him to pull the whole structure down. Now, the Lyons crew is looked at differently. They aren't the untouchable power brokers anymore. They are guys who got chased out of their sanctuary. This is the new reality. You can't buy safety with a plane ticket. You can't hide behind a reputation in a different time zone. If you are involved, you are a target. The Dubai ambush proved that the Daniels are willing to travel to settle a score, and the Dubai police proved they won't tolerate the mess. The playground is closed. The men who used the Emirates as a base to direct violence in Scotland have lost their command center. They are exposed, they are vulnerable, and their enemies know it. The chessboard has been flipped over, and the pieces are scattered. The junior associates learned a hard lesson, but the real lesson? It's for the men at the top. In this war, there's no such thing as a safe distance. No such thing as a quiet corner of the world where the violence can't find you. The desert proved that. The desert trap didn't end the feud. It just stripped away the illusion of safety. With the Lyons faction exposed and the Daniels reclaiming the streets, the next chapter won't be written in peace treaties, but in police reports. If you want to see how this war started back in the beginning, watch this video here. Subscribe for the stories the others won't tell you. Be safe, be healthy, bye for now.